Barry Trotz, the head coach of the New York Islanders, a hockey lifer, joins us, I believe, for the first time in a long time, and we're lucky to have him on. How you doing, Barry?
I'm doing fine. How are you guys doing?
We're doing pretty well. So how does a hockey lifer like yourself kill time during quarantine?
With doing hockey things. Everything from basically what I've done is sort of taken the approach what I do every summer. I go over our systematic stuff, our individual stuff, just do a reassessment of how I coach, what we're teaching, trends in the game, and sort of just put stuff together. So I've sort of every morning, my youngest goes to school with my wife, and I take the other side of the house and work on some hockey stuff till they're done, and then have a little lunch, and then usually get a little bit of fitness in, and then get a project usually from my wife, and a home project. So that's generally how I start my day every morning.
So are you anticipating if we can come back and play, if the NHL returns at some point this summer, that you might be able to implement new systems, new lines, a new approach to the way your team plays?
I think you can tweak it. I don't think, we're going to have a training camp. And just like every training camp, I think that the difference is going to be that, the players a lot of times, they ramp up in the summer. They work out in the gyms, they start going on the ice, they work with their skill coaches. Then that ramps up to, some scrimmages. And a lot of times in the scrimmages, you get a lot of bad habits. And so a training camp to me is getting those habits out, getting your system implemented, and then just reassessing what we did. We had a lot of injuries down the stretch, and we added a couple of people, and just making sure that we can tighten things up. And coming back, I think I'm like you guys. I don't know much more than you guys do, but it looks like it'd probably be a 3-week training camp. So you've got to sort of plan out what you would do for those 3 weeks. It's players will not have been on the ice a whole lot, so you've got to adjust to that. The athletes, skating is you can't really do much in terms of other than getting on the ice. There's some rollerblades, those type of things, but players need to get on the ice, get pushed on and leaned on a little bit for those groins to hold up during a training camp. So just being real smart about everything. And just make sure that we have a plan going in. Not, I never want to get caught off guard with anything. So I'm more of a planner.
Barry, I'm sure you know this, but players are generally not as excited about system stuff and forechecks and backchecks. Have you been kind of reaching out to the guys, trying to explain different things, or is this between you and the coaches? I know guys sometimes, I don't think I ever watch video in the summertime, but are you talking to players or discussing things, or is it just between coaches?
Well, I've had our coaches we've sort of taken a group of players and rotate them so that we keep in touch with them, just staying on top of what they're doing fitness-wise, knowing where they are, knowing where their heads are. They have the same questions, the same anxieties as everybody else. So we keep in contact with them. I keep in contact weekly with the coaches. We have a standard call every week, and have a couple of projects for guys so that when we come back, we're not scrambling. I think the biggest thing when we do get back, and I do believe we're going to get back, is that you're going to have to know where you're going to have a plan in place. You're going to have to know where your team is individually. So the communication and all that, we're not showing them film or anything like that. It's more of where they are mentally and physically going into the camp, and then just making them aware that it's when it does, the hammer falls, that you've got to make sure that you're ready to go. You're not going to be able to catch up. That's probably the difference. When we start up, it's probably going to be for real. In my estimation, and you've got to go right away. You look at a regular season, you play 82 games, and you make the playoffs, and then you ramp up for playoffs as well. So this is going to be something that's going to happen a lot quicker, and you got to have that mindset. It's unusual times, and you're going to have to do unusual things to be successful in this business.
with Barry Trotz. So when you say you're going to need to know where every player is individually, does that mean you're going to be standing beside the scale when they step on it for the first time?
No. I think they're athletes, or they should be athletes. I think we've got a pretty good group of guys. I think we have a pretty good culture, and if you're not in shape, well, it'll be pretty easy to tell. So from that standpoint. But we're going to do. I'm sure we'll have to go through all the the protocols that we do every training camp, just because we've been off for so long.
Barry, I wanted to talk about when you first got to the Islanders. Obviously, you've got a unique set of players, and a guy like Mathew Barzal, who's ultra talented, likes to hold on to the puck. Has there been some learning, I guess, curves or lessons with a young player like that in your philosophy and getting him to kind of play with the puck and play without the puck in certain situations? Has it been a different challenge, I guess, for guys on that roster that have the skill and want to do certain things and have a different mindset?
Yeah, I think every team has that those players that are ultra skilled or look at the game a little different. Matthew is, I think, a tremendous talent. He's used to having the puck all the time, and I think the biggest thing from a young player of Matthew's ability that can skate and handle the puck, and they're used to having it, every time they step on the ice and they want it, is the fact that, as a coach, I want him to have the puck as much as he has it now, but maybe chop it up a little bit, a little more of a give and go game, a little, trust your teammates a little bit. It's almost I get a chance to watching the Last Dance. I think it was like episode four where, they changed coaches and you wanted to, they put Phil Jackson in and he went with the triangle offense, getting, one of your most highly skilled players to buy into something a little bit different so you can have better success. So those are the things I think you run into with all these super skilled young players these days, is they're so used to having the puck so much. And the NHL game can humble you pretty quickly and force you into some areas that you want, because there's some pretty good players, and there's a lot of knowledge in the game of stopping players individually. So there's only a few of those exceptional talents, and Mathew, I think, can be one of them.
How often do you use an example like the one you just gave about Phil Jackson and Jordan? How often do you use those examples to sell a player on your ideas? In other words, hey, Jordan bought in, so clearly you should buy in too.
Well, I think you just like anybody that you want them to change their mindset, if they have certain belief systems, you give them examples, you show them, and then hopefully they agree with you. And if they don't agree with you, then you just keep going back to the well. And sooner or later, I think you get players to understand. Players in the National Hockey League are more skilled than they ever have been, but they're also younger than they ever have been, and they have more effect in the game. These young players coming in are they're not 3 or 4 years being third, fourth liners or players with very low production. They're producing pretty quickly now, and so they have a swagger, and you don't want to take that swagger away. I think you want to understand that there is a certain element in their game that you just can't teach, and it was no different than Alex Ovechkin and when I had him in Washington. There's certain things that there's no way I could ever go close to teaching him anything in certain areas of the game, but there's some areas of the game, if I can get him to buy into and understand, then he could be a more complete player, and hopefully you'd be in a position where if you're that type of player, they'll follow you a lot easier. If you're a one-trick pony, it's harder to follow those guys. So I think adding a little more substance to your game and maturing as a player on and off the ice, that's how you become great leaders. And just the growth of Alex over the years in Washington, that was a great example. And I look at a young player when I got to Washington, Tom Wilson. I mean, the first year I told him, I said, this is going to be your progression. You're going to be a penalty kill, your power play. You're going to move up. I moved him on the first line a couple times early in my first year, believing that he's going to be the player that you see now in Washington. So I have some of those players in on the island, Mathew being one of them, that can be a real impactful player in this league for a long, long time. And if we're going to win a Stanley Cup, he's going to have to be one of the major players, and I believe he is going to be.
You mentioned Ovechkin. He came out this year and talked about the Toronto Maple Leafs young core, and he said if they want to win, they have to change what they do. What is the one major thing that he did, whether it be cheating on offense or back-checking? What is the major element to his game where you believe that he made a change and helped the Washington Capitals win the Stanley Cup?
I think his value system. I think Alex, when he scored, and you rely on Alex to score, he scored. But there were some other things, the shot block, being in the lane, the defensive stuff, all that. There wasn't quite as much value, and he's always going to be that great scorer, and he's going to have a different value system, but getting it to be a little more balanced. And once it got really balanced and he understood that playing that way, though, it's easier to have success as a group, all those type of things. And he got it, and he's continued to do it. And he's, as I said to him before we even won a cup together, his legacy was cemented. He inspired so many young players to be like Alex Ovechkin and be that player with passion and all that. But, the one thing he wanted was a championship, and like we all do. And we talked about taking the pressure off a little bit and just worrying about the process of winning, not the result of winning. And he really embraced the process, and that became that value system being very equal. And you see he's the total package, physically, emotionally, offensively, and even defensively. He's a committed guy.
With Barry Trotz, when you guys won that cup in Washington, the players' celebration for the next week and a half was world-renowned.
Absolutely.
They had a great time, which they should. I don't remember seeing a video of you in any fountains in D.C., but what was your daily routine like after you won the cup?
It was fantastic, and honestly, there was a lot of heartbreak in Washington over those years, and especially with that group of Alex and Backy and that sort of group. And when they won the cup, I just said, take it to the streets. The fans want to be a part of it. You got to let them do it, and they did it great. And closest I came is I was there with when they were in the fountain there. That's about when I started seeing guys going on the fountain and doing the cake stand on the cup type of thing and drinking from the cup. I said that was probably my cue to leave, so I slipped out. But I had fun, and we had great relationship with the players. They understood that I was chasing it a long time, just like they were. So we had a little bond there, and I was really proud of how they celebrated the cup. They didn't go high. They let it out. There was a lot of emotion. You could see it in Ovi. You could see it in Backy. You see it in Braden Holtby, the guys that had gone through the years, and getting the tension out of that building in Washington was main. We won I think we won every series on the road, actually. Because I just think they were a lot more relaxed. But Alex led that whole core group that we had there was really led by example, and then we had some great performances from our depth guys, which you need, the Smith Tellys and people like that who scored big goals for us. So it was a real good journey.
Always great catching up with you, Barry. Stay safe. We look forward to having you back on the ice, back behind a bench, hopefully sooner rather than later, and we'll do this again down the road. Absolutely. You guys take care, stay safe, and we'll see you back on the ice hopefully very shortly. You got it. There he is, Barry Trotz. Barry, thanks. An all-time great coach. Barry Trotz has put himself in that category from Hall Nashville to Washington to New York. Well, he's a player's coach, too. That's the thing. He's a player's coach. It's funny. Matthew Lombardi, former Maple Leaf, and I played with him in Calgary, said when he got to Nashville, it was such a different thought process. And I think Trotz was kind of ahead of the curve. Didn't matter how the team played. They had mandatory 1 day off a week. Now, I know that's in the CBA now, but in Nashville, that had been there for years.
And it didn't matter if they got rinsed on a Saturday night, 8-1. That day off, whether it was the Sunday or whatever, he found a day off for the guys to get away from the rink, get with their families, reset. It was kind of that mindset. And I remember talking to a lot of guys, not just Mathew, but guys out of Nashville, that they loved him. Everyone who plays for him, for the most part. I mean, there's going to be guys who complain about ice time and stuff like that, but Barry seems to get it. And you can tell some of these stories here where he's there and he sees the guys in the fountain. He's like, hey, have at it. Take it to the streets.
That's a great message, man. I love that he just told us that he said, hey, like the fans have been itching for a long time too. Take it to the streets. Like, don't stay behind closed doors. Go out there and have fun and bask in it. Let people see you out in the streets of D.C. And that's a message I totally advocate for. And I hope it happens everywhere. Like it didn't happen with the Raptors. I never saw the Raptors. They were in Vegas for 3 days, some of them. Yeah. Which is fine, but it's like, okay, when are we going to get this into the streets? When are we going to hear stories about, you guys in Yorkville or down King, using Toronto as an example? And if the Leafs ever win, my fear is they would be like, we're not going out, too many people, too much this, too much that. I hope they have the sensibility. You have to be safe and be careful, but go out and have a great time. Like, go out and do it, man, and just live life and let people bask in it and party with you in a way.
But there are a lot of people that judge, though, guys. Remember Ovi, drinking at the games.
Christ.
Listen, there was a lot of – I understand that. The three of us were not judging. But believe me, there was a lot of judgment on how he was celebrating and how it ran deep into the summer. But what did he do? He showed up the next year and was on fire for goals.
Oh,
yeah. It was he was better.
He actually had like an all-time great Cup hangover start. Didn't he have like 7 goals in the first 2 games or something?
He had 9 in the first 4, if I remember. Mm-hmm. It was 9 goals in the first 4 games, I believe. So I remember we were covering it, and I had to break down some of the goals, and this guy scored 4 in 1 game.
Yeah, that's right.
It was just ridiculous, but it was, Barry pointed to a couple things. He said, the tension, the guys had a lot of heartbreak. And we forget, like Washington went through, we say 13 years, but they're not even, I don't even believe they were a contender for 13 years, but for 5 or 6 years, they were a team that was right there on the cusp, but couldn't get by Pittsburgh or couldn't, was always missing something. And then for a while you're saying this team's never going to win. You're never going to win with Ovi. You missed your window. You got to rinse everybody out of there. They stuck with it. So I thought it was interesting. Barry's such a bright guy, and him talking about, even the Last Dance, Phil Jackson coming in and getting guys to think differently. It's, coaches, they're sitting there at home trying to figure out ways to get to their players. That's why I wanted to ask him about Barzal. There was a game that I covered this season with the Islanders where Trotz had, sat him down. I think sat him down in the second or third. That was it. Like, he was done for ice time. And it was kind of a hot-button topic in the island because you're like, let this kid play. And Trotz was like, he's not playing the right way. Accountability, which is, Barzal's a really good young player. He went from 82 points to 62, and I think this season he had 60, but only in 62 games. Like, he's a star. I think he's a star.
Yeah, he's a very good player. He's up for a contract after this year, I believe, too. He's an RFA.